Coming up on the Big East channel at 10, Frank Beamer, the man, the myth, the legend. Before that, highlights from today's soccer games. But first, the 2024 football season preview show with Bob Costas.
Trying to quit smoking.
So don't take this the wrong way, but are you having some kind of seizure?
And it's gonna be hazardous to everyone's health.
Look at this guy. He smokes. Don't you wish they'd just shut up and leave you alone?
Tell me about it.
And all new Becker, CBS next after Raven.
Hello everyone, Nutty Sports Gamer here, filling in for Bob Costas. We have some Week 0 highlights to show you. We'll show you how Miami escaped the pesky Ball State squad, and we'll dive deep into the beatdown Penn State gave West Virginia. But first, what a wacky summer we had of conference realignment in college football. The SEC remains unchanged, but the Pac-12 had cold feet, deciding to get back together. They replaced Colorado with BYU at the last minute because they couldn't stand to be in the same room with Deion Sanders. Colorado remains in the Big 12. Fresno State, Memphis, Nebraska, SMU, and San Diego State joined them. Nebraska swapped places with Iowa State in the Big 10, who otherwise went back to where they were in 2023, sans Nebraska. And that brings us to the ACC, who've split into two divisions. While the old ACC teams have formed one division together, West Virginia and Cincinnati have decided to join the other division, forming the Big East. Boston College, Cincinnati, Louisville, Miami, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, and West Virginia. Let's get to know each Big East team a little better. West Virginia first played in the Big East Conference from 1991 to 2011. Their most notable season in the 90s was in 1993 when they amassed an 11-1 record, going undefeated in the Big East before losing in the Sugar Bowl to the Florida Gators. Perhaps the most memorable run of Mountaineers Big East football was from 2002 to 2011, where they went 95-33. Rich Rodriguez's spread option offense helped Pat White and Steve Slayton put up big rushing numbers, winning 11 games in each season between 2005 and 2008. While they could never reach those heights in their latter years in the Big East, they still had some incredible talent in those squads. Geno Smith, Noel Devine, Tavon Austin. After over a decade in the Big 12, they entered the Big East division of the ACC with a talented senior quarterback, Garrett Green, who threw for 16 touchdown passes and 4 interceptions last year and led the Mountaineers to a 9-4 record and a bowl win. C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White are also returning as the team's two-headed rushing monster. Their receiving core includes Hudson Clement and Justin Robinson, a transfer from Mississippi State. Traylon Davis is their starting tight end, and West Virginia possesses a talented offensive line, a group largely responsible for their potent rushing attack. Their defense led the Big 12 in sacks last year. Can they do that again in the ACC? Defensive line is full of experienced seniors, but if the Mountaineers have a weakness, it's the linebacking core. Sophomore Trey Lathan is a standout, but the others may struggle due to youth and inexperience. The leader of the secondary is free safety Aubrey Burks, who looks to help shut down opposing teams' passing attacks. West Virginia could struggle their first year in the Big East. Their showing versus Penn State last night was a disaster, as you'll see later in the program. Next week, they'll have another tough test at home, the Miami Hurricanes. If they can topple the Canes, that'd go a long way in helping the Mountaineers feel comfortable in their new home, the Big East Division. On the recruiting trail, 5-star running back prospect Glenn Rich is high on West Virginia's list, but they'll have some serious competition as Louisville and Pitt are also going after him. Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Michigan are currently in his top 3. Other recruiting focuses for West Virginia include 4-stars Ryan Kenoy, wide receiver, and tight end Cornell Zuniga, who has the Mountaineers at the top of his list. But Syracuse, Pitt, and Louisville are also sliding into Zuniga's DMs, so they have to be careful. In fact, the Mountaineers are going after several recruits that are high on other Big East teams' lists. Linebackers Clyde Bowles, Cam Freeze, and tackle Jamal Turbin, to name a few. Virginia Tech had a string of very successful seasons before leaving the Big East, thanks in large part to Michael Vick, who went 22-2 during his time with the Hokies. After a long stretch of double-digit win seasons during their first 8 years in the ACC, The post-Frank Beamer years have been largely disappointing for the program, but they're hoping things will change this season. Kyron Drones really blossomed last year as the Hokies starting quarterback, throwing for 17 touchdown passes, rushing for 5, and amassing over 800 yards on the ground. He's returning, and he's got some nice playmakers backing him up, whether it's senior Bayshaw Tootin in the backfield, or an experienced receiving core of 5-year seniors, which includes Ali Jennings, Jalen Lane, Daquan Felton, and Steven Gosnell. Plus the 6'4 tight end, Nick Gallo. The offensive line has talent, but it's a mostly young group, and it's definitely the Hokies' biggest question mark entering the season. Virginia Tech's potential on defense is what gives the Hokies an outside shot to win the division. They're led by defensive end Antoine Power-Ryland, tackle Aeneas Peebles, middle linebacker Sam Brunfeld, plus the quarterback tandem of Delane and Strong. Their schedule includes an early Week 2 test, a home game versus Louisville, followed by trips to North Carolina and Vanderbilt. If they can get through that stretch and go 4-0, they'd really be on track, as their toughest test from there on out would be Miami, NC State, and Pitt. With so many seniors at wide receiver, the Hokies had their work cut out for them on the recruiting trail. 5-star prospect Tanner Brady is one of their targets, but they also are looking at 4-stars Tua Beverly and Mick Whitaker, just to name a few. They also have a lot of talent to replace the defensive end. So while they may have a strong 2024, this is going to be an especially important recruiting class, so they gotta get it right. For all you youngins out there, a funny thing about Syracuse you might not know is when they started Big East play in the early 90s, they had back-to-back 10-win seasons, thanks in large part to Quadri the Missile Ismail, who would later win a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens as a pro. Can Syracuse have similar results this year? They brought in senior quarterback Kyle McCord from the transfer portal, who happened to play for the Buckeyes last season. Despite a solid season with Ohio State, McCord is looking for a fresh start. Can he get that with the Orangemen? Doesn't hurt to have talent in the backfield. Junior LaQuint Allen rushed for over 1,000 yards last season and hopes to build on his success. They also have a dynamic athlete and wideout Trevor Pena, and an all-conference tight end in Orandi Gazden. They have a solid but unspectacular O-line, however, which could be the team's Achilles heel. Syracuse also sports an array of talent on the defensive side of the ball. Transfer Fadil Diggs will help with the pass rush, as will senior linebacker Marlo Wax. Their secondary is led by senior Jaden Bellamy, transfer Deuce Chestnut, and the supremely talented Justin Barron. Yes, it's a talented squad, but Syracuse has a real test in their hands early in the schedule, facing Clemson at Week 3. They have Big East newcomers Cincinnati and West Virginia following the Tigers. Then they play Louisville between a pair of bye weeks, and finish out the season with Pitt, VTech, BC, Cal, UConn, and the Hurricanes. A bowl appearance is definitely doable with that schedule. A 10-win season, feeling like a stretch at this point. They're really emphasizing defense on the recruiting trail, targeting the aforementioned Freeze, as well as 4-star linebackers Tyler Costello and Creed McPherson. Interestingly enough, they don't seem to be in a rush to chase after a quarterback, hoping Carlos Del Rio Wilson or Braden Davis can step up after McCord leaves. They could, of course, see what the transfer portal has to offer too. Pittsburgh's history in Big East football was rather unremarkable. Coaches Walt Harris and Dave Wanstad were able to put together a string of bowl appearances, but Pitt's most successful season in recent memory would have to be in 2021 with senior Kenny Pickett leading them to an ACC championship victory versus Wake Forest. This year, though, Pitt's hoping they finally found their quarterback of the future. Freshman Eli Holstein transferred from Alabama after a redshirt year, and he looks to immediately prove that he could be the next great Pitt quarterback. He's got senior Ronnie Hammond Jr. in the backfield, plus wideouts Kanata Mubfield, Raphael Williams Jr., and Sincere Lee. The last two transferred from Western Carolina and will attempt to really open up this offense for Holstein. Senior tight end Gavin Bartholomew will look to really make his mark as well. The offensive line's returning 4 starters, but can they be any better than they were last year? Pitt went 3-9 in 2023, thanks in large part to an offense that only averaged 20 points per game, ranking 116th in scoring offense. Not good. How good this Pitt team can be will largely depend on how they do against old rivals Cincinnati and West Virginia. If they can go 4-0 or 3-1 by the time they face Florida State and Kentucky, they may have a shot at a bowl appearance. They definitely should do better than just 3 wins, but they have a long road to go. As for recruiting, they have a couple of 5-star guys they're hoping to get. Halfback Len Rich, tackle Ben Rubin, and wideout Tanner Brady. Otherwise, their main focus is finding 4-star guys to replenish their offensive line and rebuild their defense. When we come back, we'll take a deep dive into Miami, Louisville, Cincinnati, and Boston College, plus highlights from a few Week 0 games. Stay tuned.
It's Becker's greatest hit. You bet. Becker.
Don't you dare. I forbid you to. No.
Caring Becker.
Some guy's going to come in for this. You'll know him when you see him.
Charming Becker.
So what do you think I got? No regard whatsoever for your fellow man.
Only on Becker, 5 days a week.
The last time the Miami Hurricanes belonged to a club labeled the Big East, they practically ran the show. The Canes won national championships in 91 and 2001. The last 4 years in the Big East, they went 46-6, winning the Orange Bowl, Rose Bowl, and Sugar Bowl. They also nearly won the Fiesta Bowl in 02, but there were some controversial calls there that prevented that from happening. But they've been sailing the seas of mediocrity ever since joining the ACC. Consider this. Miami's made one ACC championship appearance since its conception in 2005. Just one appearance. Every year looks to be the year Miami will finally turn things around, only to lead to more disappointment. Could 2024 be any different? This year they're getting a very talented transfer from Washington State to fill in as their starting quarterback, senior Cameron Ward. He looks to be the catalyst that brings Miami back to glory. This offense is definitely not short on talent. Halfback Damian Martinez, an Oregon State transfer, rushed for nearly 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns last season. Add wideouts Restrepo and Jacoby George to the mix, and this could be a really explosive Miami team. They have some weak spots in the offensive line, but by and large, the Canes have the potential to put up huge numbers. They're backed by a defense led by notable players such as sophomore end Ruben Bain Jr., senior tackles C.J. Clark and Simeon Barrow Jr., and linebacker Francisco Mauigoa. Their secondary doesn't really have any obvious standouts, but they should hold their own pretty well. Miami's toughest tests during the season will be their annual rivalry game against Florida, plus contests against ranked teams Louisville and national championship contender the Clemson Tigers. If they can win at least one of those 3 matchups, they have a very real chance to win the Big East division. Recruiting-wise, it's simple. Fill this roster with 5-star talent, which hopefully includes a star quarterback. There's so much talent in Florida, they need to own that region. If they can easily get back to being the powerhouse program they once were. Louisville's time in the Big East Conference was pretty short-lived. Joining in 2005, they quickly rose to the top of the division in 06, going 12-1 with quarterback Brian Brohm and winning the Orange Bowl versus Wake Forest. They peaked again in 2012, the last year of the Big East, quarterbacked by Teddy Bridgewater with a talented receiving corps which included future NFL players Eli Rogers and Devontae Parker. They had some success joining the ACC, mostly thanks to Lamar Jackson, but they have not reached the summit like they did in their Big East days. Last year, though, they finally kept themselves a 10-win season, and they're coming into 2024 as a ranked squad with transfer QB Tyler Show playing in his 7th year in college. Can this highly experienced quarterback lead Louisville to the top of the division? He'll have junior Donald Chaney looking to make a name for himself in the backfield. The receiving corps is led by seniors Colin Lacey and Ja'Cory Brooks, who they received from the transfer portal. Junior Chris Bell is yet another weapon at Show's disposal. Can this offensive line give Show the pass protection he needs to blossom? That's the biggest question mark. They have a tough schedule to start the season, including a road conference matchup with Virginia Tech. Then they face Florida State in their home opener. If that's not hard enough, they close out September with Notre Dame. Can they get out of September in one piece? Going forward, a question for the Cardinals is if they feel comfortable giving the keys to the offense to Pierce Clarkson, Brady Allen, or will they look to the transfer portal again for help in the quarterback department? As for recruiting, they'll be competing against their Big East division mates for a lot of guys in their radar. Can they bring in some 4- and 5-star talent? Or will they rely heavily on the transfer portal to load up with talent? Cincinnati had a strong stretch of seasons in their final 6 years in the Big East, culminating in a 12-0 season in 09 that led to a Sugar Bowl loss against Florida. They wallowed in the American Conference for nearly a decade until Luke Fickell did the impossible and helped them reach the college football playoff in 2021. After a 1-year stint in the Big 12 that saw them go 3-9, Cincy pounced on the chance to join the ACC and be part of the Big East division. But of all the Big East teams, Cincy could look the roughest in 2024. They do have transfer sophomore quarterback Brendan Sorsby and halfback Corey Kiner, who quietly had a nice 1,000-yard season on the ground for the Bearcats. They also grabbed Tyron Smith from UTEP and Tony Johnson from Florida Atlantic, 2 promising wideouts who could help Sorsby in the passing game. Their offensive line isn't terrible. Right guard Luke Kandra is definitely talented, so there's potential for the Cincy team to do well on offense. But how does their defense stack up? Dante Corleone is definitely a star defensive tackle, but the rest of Cincy's front 7 is seriously lacking. The secondary is led by senior Mekhi Miller, but it ain't anything special either. It helps to have a favorable schedule. Bearcats definitely have a chance to get to their first bye week with a winning record, and they close things out with some cupcakes in Navy and Rice. A bowl game is definitely not out of the question, but it's not something to count on. The recruiting trail has been rough to start out. Only a handful of 4-stars have expressed interest in becoming a Bearcat, so Cincy's hoping to find some 3-star diamonds in the rough, and maybe the transfer portal can give them a shot in the arm next season. Boston College's run in the Big East included some decent quarterback play in the 90s out of Glenn Foley, Matt Hasselbeck, and his brother Tim. That said, they regularly made bowl appearances in the early 2000s and were blessed with the starting quarterback Matt Ryan when they joined the ACC in 2005. While Matt Ryan was able to lead BC to a couple of 10-plus win seasons, they've had a rather unremarkable stretch in the last 15 seasons. 7-6 is the best they've been able to do. That includes 7-6 showing in 2023. Can they actually take a step forward in 2024, or will we see more of the same? Thomas Castellanos returns as their starter at quarterback, who, by the way, rushed for over 1,100 yards last season and had 28 total touchdowns. Not bad. They got Kai Robichaud returning in the backfield and a decent receiving core led by Louis Bond. They also have quite a bit of talent in that O-line. Logan Taylor at left guard, Drew Kendall at center, and Nazir Trapilo at right tackle. On defense, BC has a lot of standouts in their front seven, including senior tackle Cam Horsley and linebacker Cam Arnold. Their secondary, however, is rather average and could be exposed by some of the talented ACC quarterbacks. Like Cincy, there isn't a terrible amount of interest from 4- or 5-star recruits, so they'll hope they can get the most out of the 3 stars they sign and see if the transfer portal can take care of the rest. Boston College starts off the 2024 season with back-to-back conference games, then face Missouri Week 3 on the road. Things lighten a little after a bye week, but if the Eagles want to improve on their 7-6 season, they're going to have to try to win some of these tough games. Coming up next, highlights from Ball State versus Miami and West Virginia Penn State. You don't want to miss it.
So, is this curtains for Becky's days in Boston?
Imagine somebody getting allowance at her age, huh? Shit, my mom cut me off when I was 30.
The decision of Rebecca's daddy dearest. Next time on Cheers.
Tonight at 10:30 on Channel 7.
With a lot to prove this season, Miami definitely wanted to show their fans they could handle Ball State and then some. Did they do enough to bolster the confidence of Canes fans? Early in the first, Miami managed to get past midfield, leading to this big gain from Martinez, which brought them down to the 20-yard line. Next play, Xavier Restrepo receives the screen pass and took it to the house. Miami up 7-zip. Second quarter, 10-7 score. Cam Ward hits his tight end Arroyo, who reaches the end zone, and now it's 17-7. 2 field goals and 2 Ball State TDs later, Cam Ward hits backup tight end McCormick for a big gain. This leads to Martinez's first rushing touchdown of the season, 30-21. Late in the fourth, 33-28 gains, and Martinez punches it in for 2 TDs, leading to a 47-28 victory. The Canes won. They put up a lot of points, but letting Ball State score 28 on them definitely leaves people wondering what'll happen when they face teams like Florida and Clemson. Penn State took care of the Mountaineers at Beaver Stadium last year. Could things be different this time? First quarter, 3rd and 4, near the 30. Drew Aller hits Harrison Wallace for a big gain. This leads to a jet screen to Wallace, and just like that, Penn State scores the first TD. What about Garrett Green? With the Mountaineers nearing the red zone, Green throws his first interception of the season. This leads to an embarrassing moment for the Mountaineers defense. Drew Aller rips a huge gain on the ground for Penn State, passing midfield and putting the Nittany Lions in prime position to score. That leads to Nicholas Singleton making his mark on the day with his 30-yard touchdown run. 14-0 Penn State. Next Mountaineer drive. Green gets sacked on 3rd and 5. West Virginia stops Penn State's offense, and that leads to another Garrett Green interception. Third and 6, near midfield. Aller hits Wallace for a first down. Nick Singleton takes Penn State to the 25. Another first down. 4th and 2. Red zone. Penn State's going for it. Drew Aller connects with Julian Fleming. 21-0 Penn State. But it's close to halftime, and the Mountaineers are slowly driving. Garrett Green hits his receiver Bray here, who gets the first down, which leads to Green's third interception. It doesn't get much better from there. 24-0, third quarter. Green can't find anyone, checking it down on 3rd and long. Meanwhile, Drew Aller hits Julian Fleming yet again to put Penn State up by 31. And if the night couldn't get any more embarrassing, Green gets taken down here for a safety. Penn State's defense absolutely humiliated the Mountaineers. Check out this play near midfield. Aller in the shotgun. He connects with Harrison Wallace, who sheds this tackle and takes it all the way to the house. West Virginia would get 2 late scores, but the game was well out of reach by that point. Penn State 43, West Virginia 14. The college football season truly gets underway this weekend, with the most notable Big East-related matchups being Miami at West Virginia, Louisville at Virginia Tech, and Boston College at Cincinnati. Well, that wraps it up for the football season preview show. I'm Nutty Sports Gamer saying good night.